Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Optimize Her², right on YouTube. This podcast, episode 8, will be very interesting today because we talk about educating, elevating, and empowering women. Well, tonight, our special guests are two gentlemen, our men's panel, if you will, and they're going to be talking about confidence. The confidence you're missing and how clarity changes everything. And that is in business or personal. So if you think this is about business, well, think again. It's December 2nd and 7 p.m. here in the U.S. Thank you all so very, very much for joining us. My name is Barbara E. Ringrose. I am the co-creator and founder of Optimize Her² and also of my business, Wow Women Optimizing Women. You can see me at wowwomenus.com. along with my other co-creator here of Optimize Her², LaQuincia Nichols. You can view her website. She is the founder of experiencecoaching.com. So I want to welcome everyone again for coming and joining us here today as you meet our guests, Phil Whitebloom.
Hello, everyone.
And Dr. Omar Fisher. Unfortunately, we had another gentleman who was scheduled, and I did want to make mention of him. He was unable to join us here this evening, but I did want to give a shout out because he's been so supportive of Optimize Her² and, of course, everything Quincy and I do. Thank you so much, Orlando Darden Jr. So hopefully you'll be watching this soon and you can give some feedback just to set the right expectations. We want to let you know that these podcasts air on the first and third Tuesdays of every month, Eastern Daylight Time. And they run about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on our guests and how much we chit chat, of course. And also understand that these podcasts are for informational and educational purposes only. However, we are experienced professionals and have a lot of background in our personal lives as well. So we bring forth a lot, but it does not constitute as professional, legal, financial, or medical advice. You always want to consult with a professional if you're looking at a certain topic, issue that you may have. And we do welcome you to reach out to us. So with that being said, I wanted to introduce Quincy Nichols to you, the co-creator of Optimize Her², right here on YouTube.
Hello, everyone, and we are back for our next episode. And like Barb said, it's a real sweet treat tonight because while we bring a unique and diverse perspective, we are all about learning and growing and expanding our conversation today with Phil Whitebloom and Dr. Omar. So let me take a moment and formally introduce our guests. So Phil Whitebloom, a nationally respected sales coach known for fixing a business's sales in real time and turning stalled pipelines into immediate revenue. He's the author of Handling Objections, Clues for Closing the Sale, with his newest book, The Sales Fixer, arriving January 2026. And we also have Dr. Omar Fisher, who is a globally recognized management consultant, educational planner, author, and entrepreneur. With decades of experience across multiple continents, he combines strategic insight, innovative thinking, and authentic leadership to drive transformative results. So, like Barb said, confidence doesn't come from working harder, it comes from clarity. And today, we're unpacking what clarity looks like in your money, your leadership, and your business decisions. Gentlemen, welcome to the Optimize Her² podcast.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Great to be here.
Excellent. Excellent.
And we are from different areas of the globe. I need to point this out. Dr. Omar, where are you right now? And what time is it?
Well, I'm calling in, Barbara, from Dubai. So it's actually 4 a.m. in the morning.
Holy. And it's 7 p.m. here. So we so appreciate you coming to join us. I hope you get some rest after this. And Phil, where do you hail from?
So I'm in Maryland. I am in Howard County, Maryland, close to you, not too far away. But it's the same time of day for me as it is for you. Not for
and of course, Quincy, you're on.
I'm more west, Mountain Standard Time, so it's just a little bit after 5 p.m. for me. I'm our Lone Ranger here on the west side, so I get a little bit more daylight. And Dr. Omar, thank you so much again for making all of the necessary arrangements to be here. at a very unique time zone. We really do appreciate it.
That's so cool. So confidence doesn't come from just working harder. And I think all of us would agree it comes from clarity. And we're packing this evening what clarity looks like in your money, your leaders, your business decision, as I think we already covered. So we're going to go over a lot of material in this time frame. And I think that studies show a lot. And I look at studies for women because that's what I do. Wow, women optimizing women. And 9 out of 10 women don't receive the funding that they apply for. And that's the biggest challenges women face when trying to secure working capital from traditional banks.
Yeah. And I've heard this before, and I've actually been to different seminars where they've talked a lot about women getting funding. So I would be curious, where do you think this misunderstanding or fear around money even starts from? Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
So I'll jump in. Uh, so the confidence part of this is that if you're showing a lack of confidence, you can't fake confidence. So people could tell if you're comfortable in what you're talking about, and when you're applying for things or you're even trying to give advice, if you're not sure about it, then it comes across that way. And somebody who you're speaking with or trying to engage with to have them come to your way of thinking or to get something that you need or want, they may not recognize what the situation is that's going on that's causing them to hesitate or pause or even flat out say no, but they could sense it. And that's where this comes in.
Would you agree, or did you have something to add, perhaps, Dr. Omar?
Sure. I was going to follow up with your statistics because I spent 11 years out here in the Gulf and actually looked into this matter since I have a preference to work with SMEs and have done so over a number of years. It turns out, and I think the data is pretty much the same in the US, at least 80% of the applications by SMEs to banks are rejected. And I think we can all agree that this is a huge waste of time, not only for the CEOs or the CFOs that put together those applications, but also for the banks that consistently say no to the backbone of the American economy. As you know, there are 27 million small businesses in the US and also in the Gulf area. They form the largest block of the local workforce, and they bring actually forward most of the innovation. So why does this come about? Well, I think it comes about partly for, I would say, two reasons. One of them is that we don't learn about money in schools. So many of us, at least millennials and maybe baby boomers, if we want to add that
Oh, yeah.
segment in, and I'm active in the whole area of financial intelligence, and so it's also repeating itself with the younger generation, Gen Z, etc. And and the financial literacy that is there, which is a bit spotty, in my opinion, is geared to make us better bank consumers. It doesn't help us to go deep inside and explore our relationship with the symbol of money. So consequently, that SME CEO or CFO that gal that's making that presentation, she doesn't speak the language of banks. She doesn't really grasp fully enough the language of money from the bank's point of view. And even if there is, let's say, some overflowing of confidence in terms of her business,
Mhm.
sometimes they get tripped up in the documentation, or maybe the fact that there's a mixing of personal funds and corporate funds. These kinds of things tend to put hurdles in the way of the ladies that are going to the bank, in some cases, gentlemen going to the bank to ask for money. And the last thing I would say is that one thing I would urge for the audience is to learn the most important, and in my book called Conscious Wealth, the 30-day blueprint of financial freedom, you can find it on Amazon, by the way. I have one chapter about financial ratios. So before going to the bank seeking that working capital, it's always a good idea to ask yourself, now, how is the bank looking at me, looking at my business? And these financial ratios, if you pre-calculate them, will make a stronger pitch and will enable you to come back around with the confidence to manage the terminology. For example, the cash flow, balance sheet, income statement, ratios of debt to equity. Many of these might sound pretty basic, and they are. However, that is, I found in the research, one of the main reasons why applications get turned down.
And I want to add to that so that people do understand what we're talking about. When you use the term SME, you're referring to small, medium entrepreneurs. And that's what we're talking about here. But also, I think coming from a mortgage banking background, what you're saying is spot on.
Mhm. I can even attest to that. In my background with the bank that I was previously with, we would have to do a lot of additional education when we may bring in business analysts or consultants to
Right.
help them go through some of those terms, because while someone may be a great salesperson, right, Phil, and I would love to get your thoughts on this too, sometimes they have not had, sometimes it could be the formal education.
I'd like to add on to what all of you have said, and Dr. Omar specifically, to talk about this when you talk about financial literacy and understanding. And this is by far not anywhere near exclusive to a woman's issue. This is anybody who's in the SME space. And, but being the sales coach that I am, so here's how you find this out, because it is no different in some ways, and it shouldn't be looked at any different than any other sales call that you'll be on. So what do all of you do? You start asking questions so you can learn about how to help. Otherwise, all anybody would ever need to do is play a video because everybody's the same, which is absolutely not true in any way, shape, or form. So my advice here is especially in banking, because the person that you're working with on the other side of the desk is not the person making those decisions. And so it's like, wow, what a challenge that they can't even really advocate for you because the analyst on the other side is going to make that decision. And it's not going to get overruled by somebody else in the bank because you're so far removed from them as an individual that it'll never make a difference. So here's what you do. Here's my advice. Go into the bank in advance of any kind of request and go into different banks and sit down with those people and say, what makes an application successful? Tell me what that is. And then ask questions for you, things you don't understand. People like to use acronyms. Don't, ask what those acronyms mean. You won't look stupid. That's why people don't ask. They don't want to look dumb in front of somebody else or their peers. Don't do that. Ask. Make sure you understand you're talking about the same things. My son was in a situation one time with executives where he works, and they were talking about IP, and he's in the IT department, so he couldn't understand why these executives are talking about internet protocol. Well, they were talking about intellectual property. So they were not speaking the same language at the same table, and that was causing a problem. So make sure you understand. So go in, ask the questions, and ask deeper questions so you get a real understanding. And by the way, if you realize that there's no way that they're going to approve you based on all these things that they say you have to win, don't waste your time. Go find another source. There's other types of financial businesses out there that are more than happy to work with SME. And because the banks, if one or two of them are going to reject you, they're all going to reject you because they're all using the same math. Now, I know that's a really dangerous kind of thing to say, all and everything and everybody. And it's like when my kid says, Dad, everybody hates me. I said, that's not true. Everybody doesn't know you. But the reality here is that go in and do the research, find out if you're going to have a good chance. And if you're not, go to a place where you will, because
Yeah.
the places are out there.
I like that. And Phil, you said something that I'm going to take your advice right now and ask a question because it's something that Dr. Omar said. And you used a term really quickly called conscious wealth. So I know that you teach that wealth isn't just about money, it's about some self-awareness. But what does conscious wealth actually mean?
Right. Well, first, a point of clarification back to the SME. By the Small Business Administration definition, it's a small business that can have annual revenues up to $100 million.
Mhm.
Now, that's a pretty big number, particularly out here in the Middle East, where I spend a lot of time. In the US, we've got billion-dollar companies and even have some now trillion-dollar and unbelievable annual sales. But we prefer to be talking to men and women who are heading up small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, conscious wealth, a lot of people, because they may not be so familiar with financial terms, they may get a feeling that they're broken in this area and lack, obviously, because of that observation about themselves, that judgment about themselves, they're going to lack clarity and they're going to lack confidence. So, what would be the alternative? The alternative is a self discovery journey. So, I would like to ask the audience if they could, for a moment, pause and write down 2 words that describe your relationship to the thing called money. So take a moment, write it down, think about it, because conscious wealth starts inside. A lot of us, again, grow up thinking about wealth as being external, right? As being piles of cash, we hope, or maybe a luxury car or a large home or what have you, a nice vacation. But actually, real wealth begins with a conscious awareness of who we are, our relationship to the thing we call money, and how money can amplify our values and what it is we're trying to do with our precious time on earth. So I say that the conscious part of conscious wealth comes from a fusion of having the right and informed attitude of leadership, who you are, what you're seeking to do, how you're relating to other people, the fusion of that with EQ, because as Peter Drucker taught us a long time ago, management is getting things done through people, right? So to get things done through people, you need to listen, 2 ears, but one mouth, right? And the fusion, I go a step further and I say we add into this formulation spiritual intelligence. Now, spiritual intelligence is not derived from any particular religion or set of dogma. Instead, it's reaching for a higher purpose. And I believe at the time that you started this podcast as an SME and our audience started whatever business it is they're doing, that they had a clear idea at that time and certainly a passion, some energy that was driving them toward a set goal. Why did you start the business? And how is money playing into that? Well, sometimes money takes over and starts to control us. When that happens, we lose that clarity and we lose self confidence needed to continue to drive toward the end objective. We want to serve others. We want to maybe get some fame so that we can influence others, different possibilities. But I would just add one other thing to enrich this conversation. Wealth. So we talked a little bit about conscious, right? Now the wealth part. In my value system, I'm a practicing Muslim, is wealth is more than money. right? Now that seems pretty obvious, but actually it's written into our teachings that wealth is health, isn't it? And we all know that without taking care of our body through nutrition and good sleep and so on, it's difficult to appreciate the millions that are accumulating in the bank account. Also, wealth is made up of beauty, both inner beauty and also the beauty that we appreciate around us, being able to walk on the beach with a sunset, right? And I'll close by saying wealth is also about the knowledge and the gifts that we've been given. So, as I said earlier, wealth building occurs when we're able to take those gifts, those unique talents, and amplify them. Since we're talking about businesses, right? We could talk about healthcare, we could talk about government, but indeed, we're talking about SME businesses, that we can amplify our values through the workforce, uplifting them so that everyone feels unified in the purpose that we set in motion, and ideally create a lasting legacy, which would include money.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Wow.
engaging here. Um, so, to the audience that's listening out there, I think it's important to come to terms with your own self, what you see wealth as. Some people say, I have all the wealth I need. I don't have any bills. I don't have any worries. I can watch the sunset every night. What two words describe your relationship with money? And I think that's something that you need to decide for yourself because money and wealth, as Dr. Omar, Phil, and Quincy and I are talking about here, it's not only always about money,
Yeah.
but what is your relationship with money? Some people have such an aversion to wealth that I spoke of a movie to you earlier about $8,000 that came from It's a Wonderful Life, finding $8,000. Well, also Scrooge, I know these are wonderful, loved movies that we watch around the holiday, but Scrooge had such a deep desire for money that they don't enjoy the sunsets. So I think we need to determine that for ourselves. And how satisfied are we with that relationship? And for
So
from
I
your
have a
perspective,
game. If I
yeah,
could just interject here, Barbara, to build on your point, because it's an
yeah.
excellent one. So we'll take just another moment. Imagine for a second you're across the table from money. What do you imagine? Okay, is it a dollar bill? Is it a person? How is the person dressed? Does money have a hat? And then what's your emotional connection to that image of money across the table? Are you welcoming? Can you embrace money? Or are you standoffish? You're not quite sure what is that thing called money. Again, maybe coming back to the lack of clarity with some of the financial terms. So I'll just leave you with that second exercise I wanted to bring to the audience is imagine yourself across the table from money. What would you say? And what is money telling you?
Yeah. That's a good exercise because I think for some people they may have a relationship with money that they're not even aware of, whether it is a positive or,
Mhm.
something that feels expansive, or maybe it might be feeling a little bit restrictive. And I've been going through a lot of my own work to unlearn, right, some of the habits and thoughts I had around money to open myself up to more opportunity and more enrichment, but also to your point, having to understand that it's not just about, the single dollar bill. It's about a totality in who I am and how I want to operate within the wealth and the economy that I'm building for myself.
Yeah, Phil, did you have anything to add on maybe even how you view wealth or money, either or?
For me, personally, I have my views. What I do for business is to help people to do more business, to earn more money so they could do what they want with it. So where I'd like to relate this, and I hope, Dr. Omar, I'm representing what you were saying here, certainly in the spirit I am, is that when I'm interviewing people about what they want to do, let me give you an example. I was in a meeting, I would call a discovery meeting, learning about how to help somebody, and I was asking her, why am I here? And she was working for a company, and her sales were not very good, and she needs to improve them. And I asked her, why? Why do you need to improve your? What do you want to do? She goes, well, I'm a single mom. I have a young son, and I need to be able to feed them. And now I'm going to sound like a bad person here for a second, but I said, so what?
Yeah.
I said, everybody has a family they need to feed. Everybody's got situations and stuff. So but what is the real, what is behind this? What do you really want to do? And I'm shortening up a much longer conversation. And I said, what is it that you want? What is your ultimate goal here? And she said, I want to own a therapeutic horse farm. And in order to do that, well, all of a sudden, the most important thing in the world seemed like to feed herself and her son, which is definitely important. And I wasn't minimizing that, but I'm saying, what is it you want to get to? And that was it. And that was it. So what it came down to, so I said, if I'm going to help you, it's not about helping you to pay your bills and feed your son. It's about helping you to get to this therapeutic horse farm.
Yeah.
And she said, exactly, because if you've got that, you're obviously feeding your son. I always tell the joke, where we've heard, you ever heard the saying, the first million's always the hardest? Well, why would you start there? Why not start with the second million? Because if the first million is the hardest, you start with the second million, the first one comes along, right? So don't work so hard and focus on this. So then it was all about focusing with her on why she doesn't have the horse farm. And I said, why don't you have the horse farm? She said, because people are telling me it's a bad idea. I'll never be able to do it. It costs a lot of money and all these other things. So now I'm not coaching her on how to be a better salesperson to feed herself and her son. It's to get her mindset right on this. I said, first, those people are not your friends. They are your family. They love you. They're trying to protect you. But tell them, you're not helping. I'll see you on the holidays, and go find people who could help you to get to that horse farm, because you could get to that. I said, when do you want it? She goes, I'd like you to have it in the next 3 years. I said, well, that's what we work on. We work on you improving your sales so you could start putting money away to get to this horse farm. And by the way, I know people who are in this business exactly what you want to do, and I could introduce you to them. And maybe you could get a job there on the weekends or something, or and build relationships. So going back, the money is a means to an end.
Yeah.
Unless you're using Scrooge, which money was a means to more money. But for everybody else, there's a reason why they want to do it. And it's an individual reason. You cannot categorize people and stereotype them, because even when you get them in like areas, that individual reason is theirs and theirs alone. And helping them to get there is why I do what I do. Yeah.
Very interesting, depending on how you view things. So we talk about wealth, and wealth, a lot of us say, and we talked about the banks. Dr. Omar, you were talking about the banks and the acronyms and the information that they ask you, and we're speaking two different languages and so forth. Typically, people think of wealth is, this is how many assets I have, and then I subtract my liabilities, and then that is my wealth. So, what, after all this discussion here, what do you think is a healthier definition then of wealth? Is there one that's more complete?
Excellent. Yes, thank you, Barbara. In fact,
Mhm.
that was mental telepathy, because that was a point I was going to bring up
Our
next.
universes.
Is when people think about wealth and they're in business, typically, as you just rightly said, they run a calculation, which is from the balance sheet, which is where you put assets on one side, usually the left, and you put liabilities on the right side of the balance sheet.
Right.
And net worth is the subtraction
all the way at the
from the assets, which hopefully are greater than the liabilities, then if they are, you end up with net worth. And when you ask somebody in business about their wealth, they go to that calculation and what money is sort of left over after subtracting all the liabilities from the assets, and that's net worth. However, what's far more important in the world of conscious wealth is self worth. Now, self worth is only something that you can define for yourself. Another term similar is self-esteem. And that's why I said early on that the real journey to get to clarity and get to self-confidence, that journey around money goes through the self-esteem. And no one can give it to you. It's something, if you pay more attention to other people's opinions, or what Peter Sage calls goop, the good opinion of other people, it gets sort of stuck in this gooky stuff, right? Then it becomes much harder for that person to arrive to self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back to the story that Phil shared with us, under his tutelage, this lady was able to work through the whys. And that exercise, by the way, in the textbooks, they say you should ask between 5 and 7 whys.
Hmm.
So you don't just stop at the first one. Why do you want the money? Why do
Go
you want
down.
to take care of your family? Why do you want this? Why do you want... And that's part of this journey to self-discovery that we talked about at the top, okay? Because money is, as we said, it's only a symbol, and it amplifies who it is we are. So the focus needs to come back to who it is you want to become. Now, the truth is that many people don't take the time or enough time to sit down, at least in my coaching experience, and decide what it is they really, really, really want. And so that's one of the first exercises that we go through. But I'm glad you raised that point, Barbara, because it's simple, but it's very profound to come to an understanding, come to clarity on the difference between net worth and self-worth.
Very good. I think you did a
Yeah.
great job of that. Anything else you would like to add there, Phil, in your
No,
experience?
that's perfect. I'm all
I'm
good.
telling you, it can be very confusing, but when you look at self and you talk about self-esteem, they kind of sort of mean the one and the same thing. Um, People lack confidence. They lack
Mm-hmm.
confidence for a reason. And then why do you lack confidence? And then when they come back to you, that's a really good one. When I coach with my ladies in WOW to go through, let's say, a 5 or 7 part process of the whys.
Yeah.
When our children were little, they would say to us, why, why? And so that kind of like came to mind real
Simple
quick.
question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm back to the whys, but it does give clarity.
Yeah.
It does.
I have to say, and I'm not a psychologist, and I don't play one on TV or on YouTube. And but self-esteem and self-confidence, they're not actually one and the same, because I believe that self-esteem, the lack of self-esteem, is a result of low self-confidence, and it builds on itself, and it's a pariah, if you will. It's not a good thing. High self-esteem, you should be confident in yourself and you should be proud of your accomplishments for whatever they are, but you have to watch that line where high self-esteem doesn't become high self-arrogance, because
Right.
that
The
does not
ego.
bode well for communications in any way. That self-confidence sometimes is because something bad has happened, and it's kind of thrown something in such a way that is dramatic. Barbara, earlier today, I was sharing a story with somebody who, to no fault of her own, lost her business in one day because it was something
Incredible.
that was totally out of her control.
Mm.
And she was crying hysterically when we were talking, and you wouldn't think a sales coach would be talking to people who are crying, but she
Mhm.
really was. And what I realized was that she had forgotten what she had created for all those years and for all those hundreds of customers and for all of her employees, because this one terrible thing that happened that she had zero control over. Um, and she's devastated.
Yeah, rightly
And
so.
so her self-esteem was also impacted. And this was, it was kind of like my hobby and everything is astronomy and cosmology. And you could almost talk about it. It was like almost like a big bang, except in
Mhm.
reverse. It was like terrible. So helping her in this particular case to understand, to remind her of all the great things she had done for all these years and all these people that she's employed and all these customers she's helped and everything else. In one day, she had a turnaround. Now, I didn't say that turned around everything right away, but I checked on her 2 days later because I was worried about her, and she was so different. It was amazing. And I said, "What happened?" She goes, "Phil, you reminded me of what was good." And she goes, "I actually got a client the next day." And so it wasn't, she did it on her own. I didn't do anything. I just listened to her, and I had a reminder of what she did. It wasn't made up. I never met her before that day. That was the first time I met her. She was a referral, and that's how it started. So people have to be proud of what they've done and where they're at and how they got to where they got. You can't compare yourself to your neighbor. You can't compare yourself to your uncle or your aunt. You have to compare yourself to yourself and measure yourself that way.
Oh, yeah.
And money has an important role in everything for sure. But if you're simply just counting the dollars and you're comparing yourself to the trillionaires, you're going to be in a bad place. But
Good
that
point.
doesn't necessarily mean it's
Oh,
quality of life.
could I add something?
Go right
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you. On the basis of that story, it triggered a thought that, again, around the theme of confidence and self-confidence, that many people um, just they carry a belief that they don't deserve to have X.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe it's a trauma or maybe it's something from their childhood. I actually I call that a money wound, and there are ways and methods to heal such wounds, but first they need to be acknowledged. And so the acknowledgement here would be, I deserve, look through that trauma, which might take a few days. I'm not trying to make it smaller than it actually is in terms of the impact to that person. But look through that to say, I deserve to start over, or I'm still on the path, but there was a little dip or a big dip, as the case might be. I had an incident in Dubai where I had a sizable sum of money stolen from me. I put my faith in a particular company, and I went one day, and the chains were on the door, and the legal notices were there, and everybody was gone.
Wow.
And that was a significant sum toward my pension. So life has these twists and turns. However, um, what we can do to face that is, in some cases, simple affirmations. If we have, for example, forgotten, at least temporarily, and we don't have a support network around us to remind us, then we can go to affirmations, which I deserve. I mean, I woke up this morning. There are a
Yeah,
lot of people that didn't wake
Yeah.
up. So let's be
Absolutely.
grateful. Let's start our day from a point of gratitude and accept that there are going to be these twists and turns. We don't close every sale, right, Phil? We hope to get up to at least the baseball analogy of a 400 out of 1,000, and that's a great uh, baseball career, and that means that you're striking out 60% of the time, right?
Yeah.
Obviously not so pleasant to have rejection like that. But if you focus on yourself, your inner confidence. Now, how do we, I'd like to make some comments, if I could, about how we can nurture that. How can we nurture more clarity and self-confidence under, pressure, either daily pressure or trauma when it occurs to us? The answer I've discovered, or one answer, comes from the Heart Math Institute, which I highly recommend in California, a little closer to you, Q. And the Heart Math Institute has studied for 4 decades the relationship between the human heart and the brain. And what they found, very simply, is that when these two aspects of the human body are in synchronicity, that there is actually more clarity, or what they call coherence, in the brain functioning, but also in the heart functioning. It turns out that the heart has 40,000 neurons. The neuron is also existing in the human brain, of which there are, tens of millions. But the point is, how does that communication occur? And if that communication has dissonance, has friction, has conflict, you're out of balance, literally, that's when we're challenged with a lack of clarity. And obviously, a lack of clarity in our thinking around our business decisions is likely to lead to an erosion of self-confidence. So how can we, very quickly, how can we work on creating this synchronicity between the heart and the brain? Well, it's by focusing on your breathing and setting time aside during your busy day, maybe even 3 minutes, where you focus on your breathing, you get into a sense of presence, being in the present moment, and then going back to the day-to-day tasks and so on. And so there are exercises. I've written another book, just if I could say, it's called The Aligned Leader, Mastering the Power of Heart-Mind Coherence, where I dip a lot into that research. And there are other books also that talk about this, and I would recommend that to the audience as a way to work toward more consistency in the body-mind clarity, which will grow your self-confidence, especially when facing those bankers.
I do want to make a comment here because one of our audience had said conscious wealth means earning, spending, and growing money with awareness and intention, not just to accumulate, but to align your finances with your values. It's wealth that's ethical, sustainable, and improves your life and the world around you. And
Beautiful.
you also
That's excellent.
commented, Quincy commented back and so forth. I think that's one of the things that we think amassing, and I'm sorry for your loss, that is significant as you go through the lifespan and you accumulate wealth, the dollar signed part of it. And then you find that someone decided that they wanted to take it away from you. And that's very difficult for people to recover from something like that. And I think that, you do have to count your blessings because there are so many things in life. We spoke about family earlier before we got on this podcast and the importance of family and the connections with family. We've talked about other things and leadership in business and confidence. All of these are values that we have. Some of them may be mores of the community that we live in and so forth. And some people are probably just sitting here listening to this thinking, how did I miss this? Why didn't I know about this? And Phil, you mentioned, this stuff isn't taught in school. I remember my brother saying to me when I opened a checking account, he goes, oh my God, why did you do that? And I said, because I can pay my bills. He goes, oh, well, they're going to charge you interest on it. He thought it was a credit card and he was 3 years older than me.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, again, the definitions, people don't understand banking. They don't understand money. They don't understand wealth. And this is certainly a great introduction here on Optimize Her², where we can engage the community for them to take a look at this and breathe.
Hmm.
Balance yourself, because if something bad happens to you, like that woman, Phil, you spoke about, I've had hardship myself. It's
Oh, yeah.
not easy to overcome when it's happening to you, and it does take some time to recover. But doing simple things like breathing when something happens, I sigh a lot. When stress is getting a lot, I go, "I let it out." And
Yeah.
people will say, "Boy, that was a big sigh." That's how I handle it, because if I don't, Dr. Omar, it would build up, and I'm sure I wouldn't function very well.
Yeah. That reminds me of Phil talked about too in this story with the lady who needed the sales coaching, having that deeper reason why. And for some people, they haven't even allowed themselves the opportunity to become that honest and vulnerable as to get to that why that can trigger some sort of fear or emotion. And when you start to name, to me, what I call it is like your moonshot, right? That thing behind the thing that's behind the thing, that's what you really want, right? And allowing yourself to speak about it and speak out loud, that can be scary sometimes. So I think, if nothing else, just being able to open up this conversation of understanding knowing your why, and then also being able to have some quick tools such as the breathing, being connected, head, heart, mind, body, all those things. It just allows for you to have that clarity as you move through your leadership journey or your relationship with money or wealth.
Yeah, I would like to take this into a slightly different direction here,
Yeah.
related to this. So it's very interesting. One is, I want to let everybody know, in case you haven't realized, that bad news travels all by itself. It doesn't need
Definitely.
any help. It's got escape velocity. It gets going, right? Good news always needs a push. I mean, how many times have you turned on the news and heard 1 million people made it to work safely today as the lead story?
Yeah.
No, it was the truck accident where 4 people were killed or
Mm,
somebody got shot or whatever, everything else like that. It's the same way for everything. And when you really need to force yourself to realize those affirmations that Dr. Omar was talking about, that is just doesn't roll. With practice, it will roll because you'll start to believe it because you'll feel better.
consistency. You talk
Affirmations,
about
when you start
consistency.
out with affirmations, you can't help, but you have to believe them. There's lots of philisms out there, and one of them is that when used honestly, the most important tool you have is a mirror. In other
Mhm.
words, you can't look in the mirror and lie to yourself, and so when you're saying these affirmations, look in the mirror and do it, because you're going to be looking at yourself and you say, wow, and you're going to believe this stuff because it's true. You don't make up something that you can't do. Say, I'm going to be join the Major League Baseball and be a 400, have a 400 batting average. That's just not going to happen. It was 2 years younger than one. But
So
but
I'm
here's
sorry.
where I'm going with this.
Yep.
It's building on your strengths. There's so many people that automatically focus on the negatives. Let me give you an example of what happened a week ago Wednesday. 3 different places, people came up to me, said, Phil, I got this idea. Or one of them was in a group, and it was a great idea. And before anybody could respond, that same person was saying, but I can't do this because I'll have these tax implications and I can't do that. They are talking themselves out of
Right
something
out of
before
yeah.
we even got going. And it just makes my head pop off to the point where I wrote it up in my weekly blog, and to say, stop doing this to yourself. If it's a good idea, look for ways to get it done. There's a great book out there called Who Not How.
Yes, it's a great book.
Great book. And find who could help you get it done, because there's all these free consultants around that'll tell you all the reasons why you can't do something.
Mhm.
And what you want to do is, if it's a good idea and you have a vision for it and you have a passion for it, then follow that passion. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean you're going to have speed bumps, but I'm not saying there might not even be a wall there that you either have to say, okay, well, can I go around it? Can I go over it? Can I go through it? So things are tough. Don't, self-confidence comes from making these little successes.
Yep.
One giant sale does not give you the reason that you're a great salesperson. I always say, yeah, I ask people to get their attention sometimes. Who's the better salesperson? The person that sells $10 million a year or the person that sells $100,000 a year? And people naturally will go, well, the $10 million. Say, well, what if I told you that that person's product cost $10 million?
Made one sale.
They say they want sell. And how much do they keep from that? Oh, $50,000 because it's all in cost of goods sold. But what
Interesting.
about this $100,000 person? Doesn't even match, not even close. Yeah, well, this person sells 2-cent pencils one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
This person made
We've had a
50,000.
lot of takeaways here today, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've had a lot of takeaways. So I think maybe we can do a round robin here, and between Phil and Dr. Omar. So summing up everything here today for our audience, what is one action someone can take away from today's podcast on Optimize Her² that they will then get a clearer and more confident, they will become clearer and more confident with their finances?
Waiting for the expert in that area.
There was a lull there. I was like, oh, what
No,
happened?
Dr. Omar is very qualified to answer that question. Mine's more of an opinion.
Thank you. So, yeah, what I would suggest is a simple question to get started could be, are you controlling your money or is your money controlling you?
Powerful.
And if you're controlling your money, then how can you make the amplification of your values more apparent to be more effective, to be more generous, to have more impact for your family, impact for the community, impact possibly for the society through charitable giving, for example, if
Good
you're
point.
blessed with more income than expenses on a regular basis. If, on the other hand, you come to the conclusion that, well, right now, and we hope temporarily, my money is controlling me, and this occurs often when people get into debt. And it's said in our teachings that you have an upper hand and you have a lower hand. Which do you want to be? If you are the lender or you are the borrower. So in a debt relationship, typically the human being who is the borrower loses some freedom. And therefore, money starts to control her life or his life. And this can be on a personal basis through credit cards or personal loans, or it could be in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And Barbara, you mentioned earlier about cash flow and raising maybe inventory financing or some money that's needed to hire the next person for more sales. So if the honest answer to the question is your money is controlling you, then that needs a full and deep kind of exploration to see what can change. If you are burdened by debt, then there are tactics. We don't need to go into it here, but there are tactics you can use to pay that off, to pay the higher interest rate, credit cards first, etc. But it's important to recognize it, and starting today, don't wait till tomorrow, starting today to ameliorate and make it easier, because we talked a lot here tonight about stress and how stress can feed into lack of clarity and ultimately lack of self-confidence. So we want to encourage the audience in the different direction, where you feel in control of yourself, of your business, and of your money.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I would like to, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
And I would like to jump in and say, the way to accomplish this is to realize that the smartest people in the world are the ones who realize that they're not the smartest people in the world. And
Good point.
so ask questions. So when you're sitting with a financial advisor, a banker, somebody else, and when they say to you, do you understand? Don't say yes if you don't, because that's not a fair question. If I was on the other side of that coaching them, I would never say,
Sure.
ask anybody, do you understand? Because people are going to be afraid to answer honestly. And for all the reasons that would be a whole nother podcast to be continued next Tuesday.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
the but the reality here is you say, what did I say that was really helpful for you, as if you're the banker or you're the finance person talking to one of us, what did I say that really resonated with you and why? And then what could I have done better? What
Mhm.
could I have explained deeper? And this is going to help people to come out and ask questions. So if you really want them to understand, you need to help them to understand. Now, on the other side, of sitting on the borrower side, if you will, and where I am now with all of you in this case. So when somebody says to you, "Do you understand?" and they're bobbing their head, and I can have everybody bobbing their heads or waving back and forth, but what's going to happen is they're not going to do business with you because, and you're going to think they are, or vice versa. They think they can when they can't. All Both are bad situations. What you want is you want to ask these questions. You say, I would like some more explanation as to this, or why would this be better for me than from my colleague who did something similar but went down a different path. What's the difference? And make sure that you are totally comfortable. And if you think you have a question, here's another philism. If you think you have a question, you have a question and ask it. And,
Yeah.
I always say, people, like even with the kids and stuff, when they say, I think this is the right thing to do, or I think this is the wrong thing to do. Well, you know the answer. Why are you asking me? You already know the answer. I don't have to give anything there. And it's not like saying, could you explain Einstein's theory of relativity? That's a question probably is going to require a little bit of explanation. Because they don't, people, not everybody's got that figured out. So, but ask the questions when you're on one side of the desk and ask until you're sure you really got it. And you don't have to agree to something you don't like or you don't feel comfortable with. That's okay. And on the other side, it's our responsibility to make sure that the people we're talking to understand. It's not their problem, it's our problem. It's our job. I was in an environment one time where somebody said, well, if they didn't understand this communication that we sent out, then they're just too dumb. That was really said, and I won't even lay out where that was. But it really happened. And my response was, if more than 60 or 70% of the people interpreted this to be the one way, I don't think the problem was with the individuals. I think the problem was with the communication.
Absolutely.
And
Communication is key in any
I
relationship,
said, so ask those questions
any situation.
Yeah.
and understand and feel comfortable. And don't move forward until you do feel comfortable. Don't let anybody bully you into something where you've done something. We all have been bullied into things that we didn't really understand or didn't want to do. And then we were sorry. And,
Mhm.
follow your gut is a good reason, a good thing to do. Your head thinks a lot, maybe overthinks it, and your heart is too big sometimes, but your gut's usually telling you, stop and
Yeah.
listen.
Well,
Absolutely.
like you said, I think we could talk about this until next Tuesday. And there is just so many facets that erupted during this podcast here this evening. And you gentlemen certainly brought some very valid points and from your experience, both professionally and personally. And we greatly appreciate that.
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Omar coming here from on the other side of the world, practically. We really appreciate that. You've joined us here at Optimize Her². We want to provide as much value to and authenticity to our visitors here and our viewers here. And I think talking about money, a lot of people don't want to talk about money. We don't learn about it in school, is that we brought up around here, and bringing a little bit more clarity about confidence and wealth and how they can affect where you are, your happiness,
Mhm.
your balance between the heart and brain, for instance. That was a good point that you made earlier. I think clarity is something that all of us are searching for and asking the question why. So, in wrapping this up here, we thought that we were going to be talking for 30 to 45 minutes, and now it's like over an hour. So, really got a lot of good points here. I think we could
Mhm.
spin off in many different tangents with Optimize Her² just from this podcast alone.
Oh,
So, we
yeah.
may have to have you gentlemen come and join us again, right, Quince?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely a great conversation, and I know for me, I think to your point, Barb, of just really gaining the clarity will help you build the natural confidence so you don't have to, fake it until you make it, right? And just learning that you really do deserve both, that you can have the clarity, you can have the confidence, you can define what wealth and success means to you. And number one, you don't need to be bullied, and ask the questions until you have the answers that really feel right for your decision.
Right. And don't go at this when you're, especially if you're making an investment decision, a credit decision. People go on the internet and they'll look for tennis shoes for an hour or two. Why aren't they looking up information for their borrowing and so forth? So taking their time to go into it rather than jumping in, I think was a good point early on in the conversation as well. Again, we thank you so very, very much, Phil, Dr. Omar, for joining us here on Optimize Her². This has been very enlightening, engaging. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And of course, being with Quincy, I always enjoy being with Quincy here on the Optimize Her². We'll be back on December 16th to talk about traditions, Quincy. And I think you all interacted with Trisha. Trisha is our digital operations specialist. We're going to talk about traditions around the holidays and so forth. So
It'll be fun.
Looking forward to
Delighted to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Omar, and thank you, Phil.
Thank you. No, it was great. I loved it. I loved the format. Thank you very much, Dr. Omar.
Nice.
Pleasure to meet you.
So, hey, to our audience and also to you gentlemen out there and also our guests, please go to YouTube at Optimize Her², and we'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe. We are really pleased with how Optimize Her² is engaging many of you, and we want to have you come back. Please, if you have a comment, if there's some topic, if there was something that resonated in this podcast here this evening, let us know with a comment. Please let us know. And we look forward to seeing you in the future here at Optimize Her² on YouTube. Thank you so much and stay well.
Take care.